Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good afternoon everyone. Thank you for joining us today on another session of Tarik time, and this time we're having a topic of 3G sunsetting, the dusk of mobile technology. So we are very fortunate today. We're going to have a speaker who is actually the chairperson in charge of the 3G sunsetting task force. So with us, let me introduce to you, we have Dr. Nasruddin Atiqullah from MCMC. Welcome, Dr. Nasruddin.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. Thank you, Prof, for inviting me for this talk.
Okay, so before I give the floor to you, let me introduce about yourself to the members first. Dr. Nasruddin is actually our own alumni, is Multimedia University's alumni. I think it was 2004 or 2003, Dr. Nas?
Graduated year 2000, Prof.
2000, sorry. That was like the first graduation.
Yeah, I
the
started
first convo,
The first convo in Cyberjaya.
The first convo in Cyberjaya, right.
In Cyberjaya, yeah.
Okay. So he has a history. He's the first batch to have graduated from MMU Cyberjaya in the year 2000. A bit about Dr. Nasruddin. So he has been involved with MCMC. He has actually a very extensive experience in the mobile telecommunication industry, both technical and also regulatory aspects. He possesses cross-functional knowledge, having tacit and explicit knowledge of serving in telecommunication industry and also with Malaysia's communications and multimedia regulator. Before he was the chairperson of this 3G Sunset Task Force, he was actually the chairman or the chairperson in charge of the 5G testbed working group. So he has a very vast knowledge in this area. So without any further ado, Dr. Nas, I give the floor to you, and hopefully everybody has their teh tarik with them, so they are ready to hear what you're going to present to us today. So the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Prof. Yusuf, for the introduction, and also again for inviting me for this Tech Tarik session. It is an honor for me to speak as part of an alumni of MMU, and also to talk about one of the initiative that we are currently embarking together with the industry with regards to the 3G sunset. So yeah, and the title for your information was given by Prof. Yusuf himself. So okay, so I'll be sharing with you a few slides, and hopefully this will give some idea and also some information to the audience with regards to the activity or the initiative that we are doing on the 3G sunset. So let me just run through the slides. Okay. A little bit about the organization where I'm currently working. We are the regulator for the communications and multimedia industry. So basically, there are few acts that is under the purview of MCMC, in which we regulate the Communications and Multimedia Act, or CMA, the Postal Services Act, Digital Services Signature Act, and we are also the permit issuing agencies for the Strategic Trade Act. And the guidance given under the MCMC Act is with regards to MCMC to follow or to perform these 10 national policy objectives that is actually stipulated in the Communications and Multimedia Act. And currently I am heading Next Generation Technology and Standards Division. So yeah, and this portfolio, i.e. on the 3G sunset, is being given to me to look into for us to execute. All right, so what would be the coverage for this afternoon? So I'll try to answer these 5 questions, which people will normally ask when it comes to any technology or maybe any activity. And in our case today, or in what we are covering today, is on the Malaysia's 3G sunset activity. And just a little bit of background when we talk about the technology 3G. Actually, it is part of the mobile technology, and as you know, the mobile technology have evolved since early 80s, from the first generation where we have the analog voice service, which already sunset in Malaysia, of course, and we in the 90s we have 2G or second generation technology that is being introduced, in which there are few service providers that were given spectrum to roll out the service, and the 3G technology were then introduced in the year 2000. And the difference here, as you can see in the slide, is that um, the data started to be introduced in during the 3G era, and at that point of time, people were excited to be able to surf the internet using their mobile phone. And then it comes 4G, or the fourth generation, where the mobile broadband then being introduced as part of the features or the enhancements of the technology, which provides speed can reach up to 1 gigabit per second. And whereas, as you will see, the 3G is about 7.2 megabit per second during the initial stage. And yeah, Prof did mention about 5G just now, and this is where we are also heading as a country. And with 5G, the promises are very, very promising. And the speeds can go up to 20 gigabit per second. The ultra reliable low latency features, which provides on up to 1 millisecond of latency, which then allows critical services such as remote surgery, autonomous car, and whatnot will be able to be deployed. And also on the massive machine type communications, in which there will be you can cater up to 1 million devices per square kilometers, and that is 5G. And but the topic that we are discussing today is basically on the one that is in the middle, which is 3G, and some history with regards to how this mobile technology being introduced in our country, in Malaysia, is as you can see, for the first generation, there were few technologies: the NMT 450, ETAC, and AMS. If those who remember that there were briefcase phone, depends on what age you are now. For those, maybe your parents or your grandparents, you might be using those they call handphones, and this is where they bring a briefcase, sort of like that also connected to a phone, in which then that is the technology then. And the second generation was introduced in Malaysia. It was sometime in 1990s as well. If I'm not mistaken, it's in 1993-94, where the introduction of the GSM, global service for global system, global mobile system. So, and also the DMs, digital Ms, which back then it was deployed by Mobicom or Mobifone, under the brand Mobifone, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, you can see that I'm not that old as well. So yeah, but the GSM and DMs, when it was introduced, the frequency, this is what I would like to also share with all of you, is that since it is a mobile technology, so it uses radio frequencies. So in this case, for GSM, when it was earlier introduced, it uses the 900 megahertz, and later there were also, I think, in the year 2000, the 1800 were then being deployed using the same technology. So for the year 2000 onwards, then 3G starts to being developed, and then it was then introduced in Malaysia. Ironically, this is when I joined MCMC sometime in 2004, and one of my key project at that time was to issue out the spectrum for 3G. So, and now I've been asked to handle the sunset of 3G. So maybe that's the reason why they are asking me to do this. But again, just joking aside, the the 3G was then introduced sometime in 2000 using the 2100 megahertz band. And later the service providers who was holding the 900 spectrum from the GSM then starts to use 900 megahertz as for 3G service. And apart from that, there were also technology being used under the 3G ambit, which is the CDMA, in a 450 megahertz and also in the 850 megahertz. And 4G, I was then involved as well as part of the issuance of the spectrum, in which the use of the 23 and 2600 megahertz band for 4G, WiMAX, and also LTE, and also for the 23 megahertz band. So it was sometime in 2010, and with 5G, as it will be coming soon, planned to be rolled out by end of the year. So we'll see there'll be this new technology of 5G to be introduced in Malaysia. So let's wait for it. And when all these have been discussed together with the industry, it was actually, it started sometime in last year, in the middle of last year, where there was a lab called National Digital Infrastructure Lab, where all the service providers were invited to discuss on how we can provide connectivity for all and how we can enhance coverage and quality of experience. From there, it was agreed together with the industry and also the regulator for a phased approach plan, in which we then, with the objective of national aspiration by 2025 to get 9 million premises passed. This is for fixed broadband or fiber, 100 megabit per second speed average, and this is by adopting 5G, and to also reach 100% of 4G coverage in populated areas. And now we are in phase 1. We are the phase 1 target is to upgrade the 4G coverage from 91.8% to 96.9% in populated areas. Mobile broadband speed from 25 megabit per second to 35 megabit per second, and this is actually the average speed. So yeah, please bear in mind, for premises passed to get 7.5 million, and the topic of the day is it's about the gradual retirement of 3G network by end of this year. And last but not least, on the 5G planning and implementation. And initially, as stated in the slide, the 5G planning and implementation was earlier planned in phase 2, but it was then fast-tracked to phase 1. So this is where everything started with regards to the activity on the 3G sunset. So what is it about when we talk about sunsetting 3G in Malaysia? So basically, it's about shutting down the 3G network, all the 3G network. Be it, as you know, we have 4 service providers who are providing the 3G network, namely Celcom, Maxis, Digi, and U Mobile. And the plan is for all these operators to then retire their 3G network by end of the year. So what happened next is the spectrum will be refarmed, and the idea is for it to be repurposed for the optimization of the 4G network, with the end in mind to get the average of 35 megabit per second as what we aspire in phase 1 of JENDELA. How does it actually benefits the end users? It provides with the retirement of the 3G network, so it will free up some spectrum that is currently being used by 3G to improve the capacity, improve the data speeds, and also to improve the 4G coverage. So with the activities and the initiative of this 3G sunset, and I think the service providers will have more opportunities to develop attractive services and innovative services based on the 4G LTE. So as we look around, there were few key motivations for any service providers to sunset the 3G network. And these are the 4 key elements of business case that I found that we have actually gathered based on few studies. Number 1 is on the spectrum and structural capacity. As I mentioned, spectrum is actually a scarce resource, very finite and very limited. As such, for the service providers to be able to provide their services, so with a finite resource, so there's a need to do a tech refresh. So this is where the spectrum or the resource is then being repurposed in order to deliver and to be used with a newer technology such as 4G, etc. The element of spares and maintenance, as you know, once certain equipment gets older, it is prone to be repaired. So as such, the cost of maintaining old network will be another challenge to the operators or the service providers. Same goes to the training and knowledge on the technology. There will be also challenges to get the right people to then manage or having the knowledge of the network. And last but not least, is also about energy and power. Imagine if you are running 3 or 4 layer of a mobile network. Imagine how much power that you require to then provide the coverage using all the 4 technologies. So that's the motivation overall when it comes to why other operators or the service providers are considering shutting down 3G network. And sunsetting a technology is something that is not that rare, I would say, and this also happens outside Malaysia and within our region, Asia Pacific region, whereby the technology of 2G and also 3G either already being sunset or planned to be sunset. As you can see in the slides, mainly what we have captured here, and it was based on the data from GSMA, the service providers, they have sunset mostly the 2G network, including our neighbor Singapore. For example, like Singapore, they have already shut down their 2G network in the year 2017. And they do have plans to shut down 3G in 2025. But they each of them will have different motivations, of course, why they do such retirement. And as I mentioned earlier, there were that 4 key considerations when a service provider decides to retire one of their network. And for our case, Malaysia, this is where we are today. We don't have any particular deadline for the 2G shutdown for the time being. However, as what I've mentioned earlier, and as what it has been announced, for 3G to be retired by end of this year. There are lesson learned based on the experience from other countries in terms of the barriers to sunset 3G. One of it is early 4G deployments did not deploy VoLTE technology. And in our case, when we started the journey of 3G sunset, which was in Q4 last year, yes, there were two operators who have yet to start voice over LTE in their network. So, but yeah, when we started the journey, they have then pick up and then starts to roll out and deploy the voice over LTE, in which now all the 4 service providers in Malaysia are providing that service. And the smartphones offered in the market today may support 3G or 4G data without voice over LTE. This is also happening here, in which we are addressing it at the moment together with the service providers. And last but not least, on the dependent services such as voice, SMS, M2M. So this is also the items that we have discussed with the service providers as part of the items that needs to be addressed, and it is being managed through a task force that was mentioned by Prof. Yusuf in the earlier opening just now about the 3G Sunset Task Force, which I'm chairing. When we talk about the sunsetting just now, it is also based on different motivations. The first reasoning was about the repurposing the spectrum. So I think if you are familiar with Shannon's law, this is how all the equations comes into the picture, where either you have more spectrum, or you increase your antenna, or you improve your signal to noise ratio. Through these 3 key parameters, then it can deliver you a better throughput. So in the situation of 4G in the country, in Malaysia, this is how the discussion were being developed during the lab, the National Digital Infrastructure Lab, where the service providers together with MCMC, we have discussed and explore all these options. And as you can see, current average speed using 40 megahertz of spectrum, it can deliver up to 20 to 25 megabit per second. And bear in mind, the speeds here are the average speed, not the high, not the peak or the peak speed. So by adding additional of 5 megahertz, by upgrading the 2G and 3G to the sites to 4G, i.e. reusing the existing spectrum that has not been used, so then the speeds can be top up to 30 megabit per second. And with the introduction of the MIMO, massive MIMO 44R, as you can see, if you relate back to Shannon's law, it will then allow you to get a better throughput. And this is where the discussions with regards to refarming of the existing technology comes into the picture, in which for us to deliver a 35 megabit per second network average, this is where the industry have felt that we need to then get or reuse or repurpose the existing spectrum used by the either 2G or 3G technology for it to be able to then use for 4G to deliver the speed that is being aspired. So that was the discussion during the lab that leads to the activity that we are now doing, which is on the 3G sunset. And for your information, our service providers have been aggressively doing spectrum refarming in their network, be it the existing 2G and whatnot, 3G, etc. And on the left side, you can see in terms of the spectrum use, these are how, in terms of percentage, roughly the spectrum are being used. It's about 3.8% of the overall spectrum are being used for 2G network, about 10.1% using 3G, and about 86% using 4G. So this is one of the consideration when to decide whether which technology to be retired. And as you can see, in total of 40% of spectrum are occupied by 2G and 3G. And this is actually as a result from the aggressive refarming to 4G by the service providers. However, should you were to then sunset one of the technology, what would be a better bet? So I think this is where 3G that is having a bigger chunk of spectrum as compared to 2G was then chosen in order for it to then be able to deliver the speed that is needed. And when we also look into the traffic, the voice and data traffic, the circuit switch voice and also the data, how the contribution of the technology to the network. Then for the circuit switch, as you can see in the slides, the 2G circuit switch voice, the trend is getting slower as compared to the 3G circuit switch voice. So basically, the volume of the circuit switch voice rides more on the 3G network. And as compared for the data service, which is you can see that by towards 2019, about 79.5% of the data traffic goes through the 4G network. So this is the part where you can see the 3G data traffic decline over the past 4 years. And as for the circuit switch voice, it's predominantly carried over 3G, in which when we talk about sunsetting 3G, there's also a need for us to include a strategy to look into the 2G capacity to support the voice traffic, plus the voice over LTE, which I'll be talking a bit more later. And not just that, we also look from the device perspective. How many devices are there in the network, how many people are using it, and not just our normal handphones. We also look into other dependents, the other devices that is currently being used, the machine-to-machine devices. This is where we have then noticed that there are that number of devices, if you were to compare using the 2G technology and also the 3G technology that was used, and bear in mind that all this data were captured based on the August 2020 discussion that we had with the service providers. So all these have to be taken into consideration when the decision for to retire either one of the technology, and towards the end 3G service was being decided to be sunset to serve the purpose that we want, which is to deliver the speed. And as you can see here, before we do a network shutdown of 3G, we also need to understand what is the current footprints for both technology. And this was captured in year 2020, where we have at that point of time 96.7% of the national coverage, which is on 2G, 95.3 on 3G, and 91.8 on 4G, covered by 4G. So should the 3G network is to be sunset, then there's a need for the 4G footprint to be as the same as the current 3G footprint, basically to cater for the areas where in serving the needs for the data traffic especially. So this is one of the key parameters that we are monitoring, and also the service providers are also helping us in deploying the sites in having the same footprint as 3G. And as for your information as well, when we embark in this journey, when we do further audit on the numbers, the number of 3G carriers that was in the network on all the 4 telcos network was about 250,000 punya, a 250,000 of 3G carriers, which needs to be shut down by end of this year. So it's quite a big task to manage. And from the discussions and also the planning, we have come up with a 3-phase approach for the 3G network sunset plan. And for the phase 1, which started from Q3 to Q4 last year, whereby we have formed a committee called 3G Network Sunset Task Force. And the committee basically looks into the matters with regards to the implementation, the strategy and execution of the 3G Sunset project. And the 3 elements that we look into are the DNA of the whole ecosystem, which is the device, the network, and also the affected party. So from the device, we need to do further coordination with the relevant agencies like the custom, the SIRIM, our certifying agency, and from the network, the readiness of the network to be able to first deliver the necessary capacity upon the sunsetting of 3G, plus the coverage of 4G, so that, as I mentioned earlier, the footprint should be equally same as the current 3G footprint. And also looking from the voice over LTE deployment perspective as well. And for the consumers or the affected party, so this is where the comms plan comes into the picture, the packages, and also the migration plan, which is required by each of the service providers to come up with, so that the customers are being taken care of during this 3G sunset initiative. And these are the KPIs that was set to the group, the task force, in which, as I mentioned just now, the 3G carriers, we have about 253,860 3G carriers that needs to be shut down by end of the year. And for the customer migration, the target that was set is up to 77% of the customers, the current 3G customers, to be migrated. And these are the targets that was set by the industry with the facilitation from MCMC. So from the task force, we have also formed 2 working groups to look into the readiness of 4G, which basically to ensure continuity of network services upon the 3G carrier shutdown, and also to ensure 4G upgrades for the 3G only sites. So this is basically to ensure the coverage footprint of 4G will then be the same, at least as compared to the current 3G coverage. And on the working group on voice over LTE testing, this group looks into the voltage provisioning, the device provisioning, the readiness of the devices, and also to coordinate with our certifying agency, SIRIM, manufacturers, and also the service providers with regards to the importation and also the policies for the devices. So then we have then come up with the network and customer migration plans produced by the service providers. We have also issued notice for this continuation of 3G and non-voice over LTE capable devices importation, and it was implemented from the 1st January 2021. Meaning as we are doing this activity, there won't be any new devices coming into Malaysia not having VoLTE capable functions. So it is very important so that we don't want the new devices not to be able to then use the voice over LTE services that is being provided by the service providers. So also we have done notification engagement with relevant stakeholders. And in this year, we have started phase 2, which is the implementation stage. How the service provider starts the activity, basically 3G, as I mentioned, you have two spectrum that is being used, either 900 megahertz or 2100 megahertz. In the 900 megahertz, the current network layout, basically the service providers only using one carrier, whereas for the 2100 megahertz, there are three carriers that can be used. So the activity starts with thinning the network, meaning say for example, if a site is currently using 3 carriers of 3G, it will then reduce to 2 and then it will reduce to 1. So that's the process of thinning the layers of 3G. So this is being done gradually, carefully, monitoring the traffic, monitoring the customer's behavior and the needs on the ground, including the M2M requirements. So the service providers have also done their pilot of sunsetting 3G in their own selected locations. That's where we have also learned on how best this sunset can be executed towards end of the year. And for phase 3, which is after this year or starting Q1 next year, the network will then be further optimized and the monitoring of the performance of the 4G network will also take place. So this is the overall plan of how 3G network sunset will be executed or currently being executed. And when you talk about the benefits, why do we need to do this? I think as I mentioned earlier, with the 3G sunset, then it allows the spectrum to be then used for further optimization of the 4G network to deliver the necessary speeds. End of the day, it's about the quality of experience to the end user. And with this activity, we also promote the use of voice over LTE. And a lot of benefit when it comes to voice over LTE, such as when you do a call setup, it is faster than when you do a circuit switch call. The quality, voice quality is greater, of course. It's on digital high HD, and at the same time, you can also, if you are on the phone on VoLTE, at the same time you can also do your surfing while maybe searching for information and such. So there are some also key benefits of using voice over LTE, of course. And I think this is one of the key activities that we have been promoting, apart from the migration of the 3G customers. So this basically covers on the benefits of the 3G sunset. As per Q2 this year, and this is what we have reported in our report card under JENDELA. So the report is actually available in the website. So for the customer migration, the target for us, for the service providers, to migrate the customers, this is purely the 3G customers, is 931,160 customers, and by end of Q2, we managed to migrate as per what you can see on the slide. So overall, the achievement for Q2 is slightly less than 100% of the supposedly targeted number that we would like to achieve in terms of the customer migration. Nonetheless, when it comes to network migration means how many 3G carriers that we can shut down. So when we compare the figure to the baseline and also to the target that we have set to ourselves, so the achievement is 113% for that particular quarter. So this is what we have achieved so far with regards to the activity under the 3G sunset. And this is just to share with all the audience with regards to the key challenges that the industry have been facing when it comes to migrating the customers. Number one, there were the group have identified that there are situation or category of users that falls under passive users. This is where they are using their 3G devices just as a backup, maybe as a secondary number, just to receive calls, or maybe just to receive SMS, or maybe banking for banking purposes. So these are the one of the group that have been identified. There's also group of users that doesn't see the urgency to change or to replace their phones, and some also only consider after the 3G network is being shut down. So they are the user which basically use voice only, and also their data usage is quite low. It's below 1 gigabit per month. And the third category of users is new 3G subscribers with 3G devices. This is also being seen as part of our monitoring on the customers' behavior, whereby there are also new subscribers coming into the network. Potentially, it is being ported. One of the situation is being ported from one to another service providers. And also maybe the customers re-enter the network but using 3G devices. So this was also being monitored and captured as part of our activity under the 3G Sunset Task Force. And there are also patterns of users who switch their device from 4G to 3G, and it was found that maybe because of certain conditions such as loss of devices, or maybe broken devices, or for certain conditional needs, which then the user will then change the use of the phones from 4G device to a 3G device. Or there are also situations where the SIM card was passed to another user, maybe to the children or to the grandparents, but using a 3G device. So these are some challenges that we have been encountering as part of our journey from the 3G sunset on the user migration perspective. However, the plan for us to manage this situation is to have continuous targeted engagement through whatever means, outbound calls, SMS, notifications, etc., and also to provide a good product offering to migrate these customers to use 4G devices. And at the same time, should the customers remain to continue using their current device, so this is where the network are also being improved, especially on the 2G network, so that for the voice service, once the 3G layer is being taken away from the network, then the voice service will then either goes to 2G, which is under the circuit switch, or if the device supports 4G, then and VoLTE, then the voice traffic will then go to the voice over LTE traffic, which is on 4G. So these are how we are trying to manage this situation. And there are also other challenges that we have looked into, or we have faced, apart from the 3G customers, as I mentioned earlier. And this, as for the one item number one there, more than 30% of the 4G devices are without VoLTE, voice over LTE features. So this was also found as part of our findings, And this is mainly contributed because of the 4G devices that is being used by the customers, the older devices. There are two cases whether the hardware doesn't support voice over LTE, in which then we can't do much about it. And there's also a situation where although the hardware supports VoLTE, but the software or the firmware does not support VoLTE. So there are also cases where maybe that particular model can be able to use voice over LTE in one's network, but can't be used voice over LTE in another network. So there's also that kind of situation in which we have found when it comes to the issues from the 4G devices. On the second item, there's also cases where there are still users who are using older SIM cards. I was made to understand that these SIM cards either it supports less than 128K kbps kbps of the data in the SIM card itself. So please, for those who are maybe using older SIM cards, so please have a look, because this may then hinder you from using or be able to then latch into a 4G network. And based on our initial scouting, it's about 1 million subscribers are still using the older SIM cards. Although there's effort by the service providers to contact all the subscribers, but I think that the situation that we had in the past 2 years since last year with the COVID-19, MCO and whatnot, there are some challenges for the customers to go to the service centers to get a replacements of the SIM card. However, I think now, since the restrictions are a bit relaxed, then these are the opportunity for those who are still using the 3G SIM card to then get a replacement with your respective service providers. As for the M2M devices, we do take note that there are enterprise customers who are using it for example, for point of sale. If you go to any supermarket and whatnot, should you want to pay using your credit card, so there's a point of sale device that they use. Some may use 3G or some may use 4G. So these are some examples of devices that involves or that is part of these M2M devices. So for these devices, there's the service providers have approached all the necessary parties for them to either the service can be able to continue after the 3G sunset, either using the 2G network or 4G network, depending on the nature of the service that they want to perform. So and for item number 4, this is also another challenge that we face, in which, as you know, we have thing with COVID, and the e-commerce platforms are gaining a lot of interest. So the selling of the devices, the 3G or non-VoLTE devices, are quite famous in the online platforms, online e-commerce platforms. So this will potentially cause the subscribers or those who bought the phones through online may have some challenges, or may not be able to use voice over LTE, for example, or maybe the 3G service after the shutting down of the network. So what we have done is that we have also engaged with all the online platforms, all the big online platforms, to inform and to educate them with regards to the 3G sunset, so that they can also help us in educating the consumers to be prepared for the sunsetting of the 3G network. And last but not least, this is also something which we have encountered, whereby about 50% of the current customers have not activated or have not activated their devices to enable voice over LTE. Meaning to say, the device that is in their hands are already capable of VoLTE, voice over LTE. However, they did not activate it. So this is the part where maybe the customers are not aware or don't know how to do how to activate the features, voice over LTE features. And there are some cases where you need to update the device with the latest software. And all this basically is for you to be able to enjoy voice over LTE. So yeah, for those who who might not use or feel that they are still not a voice over LTE user, maybe you can check your device and enable it if it is already supporting the features. All right, and there are several strategies that has been implemented for the implementation of 3G sunset. As you know, the program Jaringan Prihatin was also being used as a leverage for the end users to then be able to change their devices to latest updated device, which then can be able to use the necessary service as we mentioned. And as you can see, the service providers have also done their part in terms of providing the necessary communication plans to reach out to the customers to inform with regards to the 3G sunset, the benefits of voice over LTE, etc. So these are the key activities that is ongoing and that is being done by the government and also by the service providers to help in managing the implementation of the 3G sunset. And basically, this slide would be more relevant to all of the audience. Should you are one of the group that it falls under this category, for those who are not using a 4G SIM card, please change your SIM card to a 4G SIM card. For those who are searching or trying to get a 4G device, please get a 4G ready smartphones. And for those who may already have a device that is able to then use voice over LTE, please look back in the features of the device and then activate voice over LTE. Surely you'll enjoy the quality, the voice quality on the voice over LTE. And I would also like to request for those who are listening to also maybe provide or create share this information with your family members, parents, friends on how best actually on the activity of sunset and what that they can enjoy from migrating to a more better devices. And there were a lot of promotions and also awareness, as I mentioned earlier, and also being done by MCMC together with the industry in educating the end users, the customers on the activity that we are doing, which with regards to 3G sunset. And I think I've come to my last slide. So in summary, these are the things which would then answer the key questions that was raised. So sunset is about retiring the network, the 3G network, and it's part of the JENDELA. And it will be by end of this year. Yeah, we will then, the spectrum, as mentioned, is to be refarmed for 4G to get a better experience. And it involves the necessary parties, including MCMC, MNOs, and device manufacturers. And I think I would also like to highlight as well, although the network of 3G will be retired or will be shut down by end of the year, but we still have our 2G network. The service providers will have their 2G network as to act as a safety net in say, for example, if there's any emergencies and whatnot. So as you can see earlier, the network of 2G is quite extensive. So 2G network will still be around, and the 4G network will be enhanced and will have a better quality of experience to the end user. So I think with that, I would like to end my presentation. So yeah, I think this is uh, what I've seen. I've managed to Google. So when you talk about sunset, every sunset brings the promise of a new dawn. So I think that's all from me, Prof. Yusof.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nas. I like that quote. Every sunset bring the promise of a new dawn. There will always be, when there is a dusk, there is always a dawn, right? So there is
Yeah.
always a dawn of a new era. And definitely, I think everybody will be looking forward to 5G onwards, yeah? Things that will be connecting us. So there are a few questions, Dr. Nas. Perhaps maybe you got time to answer a few of these questions,
Okay, sure.
hopefully. Okay. First of all, I think it's from Mr. Yo Chung Yao from TMRND. Is there any 2G sunsetting? If
Um,
there is, when will it be?
Okay, 2G sunsetting, it was actually being discussed as well as one of the items, but the policy decision of it has yet to be finalized. So I would say that that there's no firm decision when the 2G will be sunset as at the moment. And to answer the question, what is 2G sunset? 2G sunset is basically similar to 3G. It's about sunsetting the 2G network.
Okay, so basically there is no plan for that 2G
Not,
sunsetting
not
because I
yet,
think
not in the near future.
not in the because I
Yeah.
think there are some people who are still using like Nokia 3310 phone, the old folks who
Correct.
still prefer that very stable phone.
Feature phone, yeah, the hardcore phones.
Yes, it's very secure. It's very hard, and then it's very comfortable to use. There is another question by Amiru Nazari. Will it be relevant to use an old generation broadband in the future?
When we refer to old generation broadband, I would presume you are referring to which technology, whether it's 2G or 4G. But if it is 2G basically it doesn't really provide broadband. So if it is referring to 4G, then for the near future, we can see the relevance of 4G to be around for quite some time. And as you can see, the promise or the capability of 4G LTE, uh, in terms of delivering the speed, it can go up to 1 gigabit per second in terms of the broadband speed of 4G. So the ecosystem actually also plays a bigger role when it comes to the devices that are being used. If you are using an older version of 4G, you might not get the speed as fast as the newer version with the capability of doing carrier aggregation, where you can, in a way, like topping up the speed from various bands that is being deployed. So to answer that question, 4G of course will still be around and needed once I think, and at the same time while the 5G network is being deployed gradually. So and yeah, you never know. I think up until a stage where when we see the redundancy of the particular network with the newer network, then yeah, it will be more economical and also strategic for that network to be retired in the future. So yeah, I think that will be my answer to this question.
Okay, great. There is another question on this old broadband by Akil. Akil Adnan, is there any cons when the old generation broadbands are fully terminated?
The cons basically is I would say on the customer's experience, having it terminated would be in a way better as long as you are using a higher generation phone or the devices that supports 4G, in which you will be able to get a better speed. Um, on the cons, I think uh, this is the part where the devices who that is only supports up to 3G would not be then able to get the data service of 3G when the 3G network is being sunset. So there's a need for if the user requires uh, to use mobile broadband services. So this is where the need for the particular customer or user to upgrade the device to 4G. So I would say that would be the the cons, but it is more related to those who are currently using up to 3G devices. So and I think as you can see nowadays, there's a lot of apps used, many YouTube's ways, etc., which requires um, higher bandwidth. So and it's already becoming a norm when we are in the pandemic stage due to COVID. So I think that the demand for mobile broadband is becoming something that is a norm. And if you, I don't know, I have this experience as well when when I went to a place where I can't get 4G. I was quite frustrated because you are used to getting 4G with the service. So I think people should be looking forward to be getting a better service as compared to getting a 3G broadband service.
Okay, thank you. There are two more questions.
Yeah.
This next one by Fui Lu. When we don't see Volte on our smartphone, we're not sure what's going wrong. Is it because of incompatible SIM card, smartphone hardware, or software?
Okay. Whether it is SIM card or not, number one, you can, if you, I think that the best is to contact your service providers, of course, and but I think for the initial check, what you can do is that for you whether you want to check whether it's a SIM card issue or not. If you are able to connect to 4G, then it's not an issue of voltage. It's not sorry, it's not an issue of SIM card, meaning you are able to connect to a 4G network. So if you be able to surf using 4G network, then it's not an issue of SIM card. Number two, for the voice over LTE, it depends on what model and at which service providers. Because as I mentioned, when we started the journey of the 3G sunset, uh, there were two operators who are the latecomer to the VoLTE service. So why it is important? The point is important is that those who have rolled out voice over LTE earlier, they have provisioned the older models first for their network to be able, for the device to be able to use voice over LTE in the network. So meaning to say, uh, when for the latecomer of Volte, possibly the device that may be already provisioned uh, by the earlier adopters may not be able to be provisioned in their network because there's an issue of uh, they call it the software development life cycle, which already ends, i.e. meaning to say the manufacturers, they have already stopped the development of the software, so they can't really do the provisioning or the patching of software to the model. So that is also the situation that you may face. But then again, you can always either contact the service providers, or you can also surf the respective service providers' website to know more whether your device supports voice over LTE or not. And also another check is that whether you can see the feature in your phone, but actually depends on the device, whether there's a voice over LTE or not, which you can then enable it.
Okay, we have one last question. Hope you have the time to answer this
Yeah, no worries.
last question. Okay, this is by Muhammad Faiz Mansur, one of our members from UKM. What is MCMC's plan for rural area, especially in Sabah, Sarawak, with no 4G coverage as shown in one of your slides earlier?
Okay, yeah, this is, thank you for the question. This is quite good, although it may not be that relevant to the sunset. But yeah, if at those areas have 3G now, by right, the plan is for that sites to be to have a 4G coverage first before we can shut down 3G. So if the question is along those lines, then that would be the answer. In which we have identified quite a handful of sites which is currently on having only 3G network. So those sites have been identified, and we have also coordinated with the service providers for those sites to be upgraded to 4G. So that's point number one. And point number two, in the other areas, that's the part where JENDELA program comes into the picture. The expansion of the 4G coverage in those rural areas, which is actually part of the JENDELA plan. So we are managing not just on the sunsetting of 3G, but the expansion of the 4G coverage through the JENDELA program.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nas. I think that's about it on our questions. We would like to thank you for your time, and also for the public to actually spend their time with us for this Tarik time. Maybe perhaps in the future we can have more sessions with you or MCMC.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you for the invite, and also hopefully what I've shared today is useful to the audience and to the listeners. And yeah, we would really appreciate if we can get all the help that we can get from the public to inform and also to educate the others, so that we are prepared for the sunset of the 3G network in Malaysia.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nas, and thank you, everybody. See you in maybe our other Tech Tarik sessions.
Sure.
Okay, Assalamualaikum, and
Salam.
very good afternoon, everyone.